When you're really excited to go to work and helping people, you have a lot of fun. The crazy thing is, and the sad thing is, the people that are money obsessed never get the money they really want because people see that there's like a big dollar sign on their forehead.
What's going on, all you Keep the Changers? Welcome to another episode of Keep the Change. And today I've got a legend with me. This young man I met like 3 days ago, and he and I kind of hit it off. I mean, we can talk, the two of us. And I was so impressed with his history and with the people that he served in this industry that I had to bring him to Keep the Change. So welcome, Larry Feldman. Larry is a 30-year veteran of the automobile business. He's been an award-winning Cadillac salesperson, a general manager, a dealer principal. He's operated Career Changers since 2012, and we're going to hear about that. He's been a keynote speaker. He's been an incredible salesperson in his career, and because of that, he's taken that expertise and become a great sales trainer, recruiter, and motivational speaker. And I can hear it every time I talk to him. The last couple of times, I'm motivated every time. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Larry Feldman. Larry, good to have you on Keep the Change, my friend.
Bart, it's a pleasure. Very glad you invited me on. I had a great time talking to you last week, and certainly looking forward to doing a lot of things with you in the future.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that. And you and I were talking, one of my questions to you when we first got going is, man, I know that name. And are you on Clubhouse? He said every Friday with David Long. And you said that you do all of his hiring for all the Hansel dealerships. So tell us about you. Tell us what got you into this. Kind of take the stage and let us know who you are, Larry.
Sure. When we sold the store, I did somebody a favor with recruiting and training. And we all know that doing a favor always bites you in the butt. So I wasn't really crazy, to be diplomatic, about the recruiting and training methods. So I started my own company. And for 4 years, I sales trained and I recruited. And I really had a lot of fun, Bart. Made a lot of friends, just had a lot of fun. And I think I did some good for the industry. And a guy in Florida said, Larry, we just had a sales meeting. And we realized of the 20 salespeople we have, you found, hired, and trained 15 of them. And the top 10 are all your guys. Can you get me service people? So, of course, rather than saying, gosh, I never did that before, I said, sure, of course, no problem. I'm a salesman, right? Everything's an opportunity. And so for the last 9 years, I've been finding every position you could imagine at a dealership: service techs, body shop people, lot detailers, porters, parts, every kind of manager, service and sales, controllers, title clerks. And I got to tell you, I'm having a lot of fun doing it. You uniquely understand servant management. When you're really excited to go to work and helping people, you have a lot of fun. The crazy thing is, and the sad thing is, the people that are money obsessed never get the money they really want because people see that there's like a big dollar sign on their forehead. But if people are convinced that you're really there to help them, you make plenty of money. And on the way, you make a lot of friends and you do a lot of good.
Yeah, that's so true. And, my question for you is, without giving all your trade secrets, because you are considered a legend in this space that you're in right now. But how do you get them to get a hold of you? And B, what are you looking for in certain titles, like for a manager? What do you look for? Are you looking for just experience? Or tell us more. What are the things that trigger you? This person could stay at this store. This person could make a big impact no matter what the role.
Sure. Well, let me answer both questions. The first question was, how do I do what I do? This is not going to satisfy the algorithm people out there, but I'm old school. I respond quickly. I write everything down. I'm on top of my game. I just can't believe, and I know you can't either because you're easy to reach, how everybody on this planet has a cell phone or two cell phones, and you can't get anybody on the phone. Yeah. So if you make yourself available and you make it clear, hey, I care about what you're trying to do, I'll help you with whatever I can do. If you're straightforward with people, but if most important, you're available, it gets easy. Bart, you really want to get depressed? Call a dealership. Call any of them. Look how hard it is to get a hold of anybody. This is like you and me going for lunch, and we only have 40 minutes. And for an hour and a half, we're waiting for somebody to come over to the table. You'd look at me and say, let's go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of being available. As far as what we're looking for, man, I'm looking for attitude. You could have all the experience in the world. If you're not a good person, if you don't have a good work ethic, if you're not excited to go to work, if you're cynical, who needs you? So we can train people to do anything. You can't train people to have a good attitude. So I'm always looking for good attitudes and good work ethics.
Do you use any assessments, or do you think, no, I've got so much experience doing this that I have a really good pulse of how this person is based, and I don't need to do any PIs or anything like that?
The reason I don't do assessments is I'm a little crazy, and I'm not sure that any dealer would hire me if they assessed me. I don't know. I mean, listen, our AI has developed so brilliantly, and there's so many people that have researched these things. So I'm not making light of the assessments, but I don't know. There's something about looking somebody in the eye and shaking their hand and really seeing if they're sincere, seeing if they can make eye contact.
Yeah.
I've looked at a million resumes on paper where they looked incredible and they were terrible in person. And then I've plucked people out of jobs where they worked at McDonald's and they just hadn't yet found their path, and they were fabulous. A good person is a good person, and good energy is good energy. So I'm not quite sure if a computer is going to pick that up, and I'm not quite sure if psychoanalyzing people is the right way. Now, there's plenty of dealership groups, particularly the big ones, that'll tell you I'm completely wrong. And I might be, but I don't think so.
Yeah. Here's something I found through all this, and this is good because we poked the bear here. I did a disc assessment when I was 22. And the thing that there's a couple pieces of this. The disc assessment said to me, Bart, this is the way you are best. That was a long time ago, 22, right? So it said to me, this is the way you are. And I thought, oh, well, that makes sense. That's the way I am. So when I got later on and I started doing some studying of disc through Maxwell, what I realized is I don't know if it's a great hiring tool, although I would love to know how they communicate. Because if we look at, like with disc, Larry, right? D is dominant, I is influencer, S is steady, C is compliant. S and C's are introverts, D and I's are extroverts. You know what's interesting nowadays, though, is 83% of the people on the planet are introverts. So if we're hiring everybody like you and me that can do all the talking, we're in trouble because they're not connecting necessarily with customers. But here's what I believe. I think assessments are good for you and me. I think assessments allow me to think, oh, that's how I am. I know emotional intelligence assessments changed my life. Now, if I gave one to somebody I'm going to hire, maybe that gives me a false reading. But if I did it, I do it for myself and I say, oh, I need a little bit more self-awareness. Hey, I'm a little emotionally immature. That for me to be a great leader allows me to know what I get to work on. So I get you. But I think if you're in a store and your people aren't allowed the opportunity to look at themselves through these assessments, which aren't science, scientists will tell you they're not scientific, but what great knowledge to have your managers have about themselves, no matter what they do with it, right? So I'm hearing you. I agree. I remember, who was I with? I was with a group that I won't name in Phoenix, and they hired me, I think I told you this, to be the recruiter. Now, right. I didn't want to be the recruiter, dude. I wanted to be the trainer. The problem was, as a recruiter, I hired people for them, and guess what? They were gone in 3 weeks.
Yeah, because they didn't nurture them and they didn't do what things they needed to do.
The problem was the management, right? And they were abusive. Dude, I don't know about you, but I don't put up with abusive. I last like no time with abusive. So the problem was that the managers, which woke me up to say, that's why I'm going to do what I do. I'm going to train the managers to be better leaders so they can keep the people that Larry hires, right? So what is it about that? Yeah, I mean, you've done a lot of things in the car business. One thing about hiring and about there's such a need. I mean, there's so many dealerships out there that need to hire people. For you personally, what have you found that you've learned about yourself by being a great recruiter in this industry?
I've learned to be even more patient than I was as a salesperson, and I've learned not to filter everything through my eyes. Bart, I have numerous faults. My strengths are I'm very organized, I'm very meticulous, I'm old school. I mean, I can't operate unless I have a things to do list the night before. I need to have some kind of organization. You laughed at me when we set up this thing. First thing I did is I grabbed my calendar book, not typed it into my phone, wrote it in my calendar book.
Yeah.
So what happens is when you recruit, you get exposed to how insincere most people are. And I don't mean to be disrespectful. I'm just telling the truth.
You get
The
it.
amount of people that say they're going to come to an interview and don't show up. The amount of people that say they want to do something, and when you give them the opportunity, they don't follow through. So initially, it made me crazy because I'm one of these guys that if I tell you I'll see you at this time and I'll be there, I'm going to be there at that time and I'm going to be there. But my goodness, you just have so many people that their appointments don't mean anything. Their words don't mean anything. And because unlike me, maybe unlike you, most people don't write anything down. They type everything into their phone. 8 minutes later, they don't remember what they typed into their phone, and they get bombarded with 12 million spam messages, and now for sure it's gone. So initially, it really used to drive me crazy when people we'd take the time, we'd set everything up, and they wouldn't show up. But, at this point, hey, I go with overwhelming numbers. It's kind of the concept of military force, overwhelming force. If you get enough people set up and you weed through somehow week in and week out, low these many years, I get enough people, I get enough hired, and I'm very proud, like any salesperson would be, that I get great retention, that I'm dealing with the same groups over and over the years because they like what I do. They know I'm going to be conscientious. So, the frustrating thing is people are people. They're great, but boy, can they make you crazy with their inconsistency and their lack of self-awareness, what you were just talking about.
Yeah. So I need some help, and I'm sure some dealers, some managers in the room need help. What are some good strategies? First of all, the best strategy is to call Larry. We all get that. We get it. And we also...
That was your audio faded out. You may want to say that 2 or 3 more times in case anybody missed
it. First thing, call Larry should be a neon sign on the Jersey Freeway. Call Larry. Call Larry. So, but here's the deal. Most people really don't do very good at hiring. So tell me some of your strategies. And you know what? I don't know about you, but I love it when people ask me questions like about leadership. I just want to dump in information on them, right? You can have it all. It's free. I'll give you everything I know. Because eventually at one point they might say, this guy's pretty smart. Maybe we want him to walk along with us or not, right? It is what it is. But I believe I'm in the world today to give. We talked about that a couple of days ago. How can I give more? How can I give more? So I'm going to allow Larry Feldman to give a little bit. Tell me about some of the strategies that you have when you're interviewing somebody, maybe some questions that are a little bit, that kind of throw them off a little bit, that give you information of who their character is. Like you said, they say a lot of things, but they don't always follow through. They being the universe, right?
Well,
the people that we're talking to.
Or simple things like, first of all, what have you been doing? Why do you want to make a change? Why were you intrigued by auto sales? What do you think it would take to be a good auto salesperson? You can't really ask people, what are your strengths? Because everybody's so insincere in their answer. Oh, I work too hard. Oh, yeah. Okay, great. They're humble bragging. But I think a lot of it is just looking people in the eye. You can't overestimate eye contact and how natural they feel. Why do you want to do this? And what are you hoping to achieve? See, again, and I'm probably rocking some boats here, but I think a lot of the things that we're programmed or we think we should ask don't make a darn bit of sense to me. Where will you be in 5 years? Well, who the heck knows where they're going to be in 5 years? Bart, I'm a musician. And when I was a kid, I remember Mick Jagger famously saying, if I'm singing Satisfaction when I'm 30, shoot me. Well, I just saw him at the stadium in Philadelphia, and he's 80, and he's singing Satisfaction. If you think about how many people look back on where they were a year ago or 4 years ago, it's impossible to say where you're going to be. Yeah. I'm more concerned in where are you now? What are you trying to achieve now? Because a lot of times in life, we get so far ahead of ourselves and what we're trying to shoot that we forget about the here and now. So I'm looking for people that are really present. And as far as hiring, we can really be stupid in terms of our employees. If you don't take care of your employees, they're never going to take care of your customers. I told you this story. It's gospel true. I watched my GM leave the dealership. I had just started. And The operator said, "Boss, you have a call." He said, "Tell them I left." And I thought, this guy's an idiot. If it's somebody with a small problem and you solve it, you look like a hero. If you let it fester all night, now the guy's furious. What if the guy wants to buy 2 cars? Oh, the guy doesn't want to pick up my call. I'll call somebody else. And what's worse is I wasn't the only salesman standing there. So what it made it clear to the other salespeople is, yeah, customers aren't that important.
Yeah.
We need to nurture our salespeople. I don't know where you worked as a salesperson, but when I got into the industry, the Saturday morning meetings were bloodbaths. They were bloodbaths. People would absolutely get beaten to death. And when you were beaten beyond recognition, then what they would say to you is, okay, go out and sell some cars. Go out and sell some cars. I feel like kicking my dog. I'm so
And you don't have dogs, you have cats.
If we don't nurture our salespeople, they're never going to nurture the customers.
So I think that's what's so fascinating to me, because you and I have been doing this a long time. And I remember my first finance manager job, I was working as a salesperson at a big Toyota store in San Jose. And within like 6 months, matter of fact, it was so funny because the first 3 months, I was lousy, and I'd come from Ohio. I was on my honeymoon, and I walked in the store to get a job, and I interviewed with a guy named Kenny Whitaker, and we had this great interview. And Kenny loved me, and he said, "When you're ready, you come on back." A few months later, I talked to his other buddy on the desk, Russ Engebretson, incredible guy from San Jose. And Russ said, "Oh man, Kenny told me all about you. I really want to hire you. We think you'll be great here." So I started at this store, Larry, and at the store I was in Ohio, it was small downtown people, right? Down home people. And there was not a lot of traffic. But I got on this store in California, man. There were 60,000 cars driving down Stevens Creek Boulevard. My mentor, the guy they had me shadowing, was a guy named Joe Flores. God bless you, Joe. If you're here, just forgive me. And Joe, he said, "Follow me." And I'd follow him and go up to people and say, "Hey, welcome to blankety blank Toyota, and just want to see if you guys are ready to buy today." God, that's what he said. And if they weren't, he let them go. So I got this early habit. I thought, well, this is how you're supposed to do it in San Jose, right? 3 months later, Russ took me inside and said, "I think we're going to have to let you go." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Minimum sales at this dealership is 10 and you're floundering." And I said, "What do you think I'm doing wrong?" And you know this, Larry. He said, "You're not following the steps." I said, "Well, Flores doesn't follow the steps." He said, "Flores is an idiot." Well, I said, "Why did mentor me?"
Can I interject one thing?
Yeah, please.
When I train salespeople, I always tell them the same thing, that the approximate cost, it can be more in some cities and less if you're, way out the country. The approximate cost to get somebody to walk in the door is $450.
Yeah.
Not to purchase, just to walk in.
Yeah.
I always explain, imagine how many cars you would sell if you acted like the 450 was coming out of your pocket rather than the owner's, because you truly are running your business within somebody else's with no debt service. It's just not everybody's smart enough to grasp that.
Yeah. Yeah. And what happened was, it woke me up. I went home and I said to myself, "Dude, I'm following the steps every step of the way." Got salesman of the month. 5 months later, man, they promoted me to finance at this smaller store. So I'm sitting in my first meeting. I'm a finance manager. I'm a big deal, right? Walking up a little taller, think I'm all that. And I sit in the back of the room, and the owner comes in and looks at the sales manager and said, "You're fired." In a room of 30 people. Fired? You fired him like that? You don't take him quietly to a room? You just fire him in front of the group? And I thought, oh, no, this is not what I want to be part of. Well, I lasted there a couple months and then went back to that Toyota store and sold cars. The point is, yes, why do we do that? People want to know today. My wife is going to roll her eyes. She listened to every podcast. God bless you, Mary. I love you so much. Thank you for listening. They want to know how much you know, not how they don't want to know how much you know. They want to know how much you care, right? And it's it. They got to know how much you care. And that's where I think we've failed so much as leaders. We're so into being production, and we're not about how do we nurture them. So when you hire managers, Larry, what are you looking for in managers? You told us, you talked about character. You talked about how you train salespeople to get put on the floor. You've talked about what you look for in salespeople. What about managers when we're trying to fill that role? What are you looking for?
For managers, even more important than salespeople, there has to be a lack of cynicism. They have to be fresh.
Yeah.
I've always said that people have the misunderstanding that it's the slick guys that get rich. The slick guys are all in their mother's basement because they lost $20 million on a .com. I'm the most naive guy you ever met in your life because everybody that ever got out of a car is like, I'm selling them. And the idiots I work with, like, he's not a buyer. No problem. I'll take care of it. Managers have to deal with the friction of customers, the friction of salespeople. Hey, if the team's bad, they don't fire the players, they fire the manager.
Yeah.
So they've got frictions coming. And sometimes it gets to the point where they get beat up so much that they get numb. They need to be fresh. For a manager to work, he's got to be excited every time a salesman comes to his desk. He's got to be excited to say, hey, Bart, come in for a second. How you doing, my man? And I got so much faith in you. How are things going? Well, not so good, or they're doing great. If they're doing great, let's make sure they stay great. Let's not slip or get lazy. And if they're not going well, what can I do to help you? Most managers I've seen, and you've seen it with your own eyes, Bart, would rather say, about time you did something right, rather than say, I knew you had it in you. You're my champion.
Yeah.
It's complicated. Why do half the marriages in this country end in divorce? It's
boy.
lack of communication. It's not being sincere to the fact that this is going to take a little bit of work, because everything takes some work.
Yeah. Yeah. It brings me back to the piece we were talking about before, Larry. And everybody's different, man. You got to know, you mentioned it with marriages. Why don't they communicate? Why don't they work? It's because we don't know how to communicate. We don't know the love language of our partner in that case. And I'm believing from the depths of my soul, brother, that we need to know how these people communicate. Everybody's different. Phil Jackson did not speak to Michael Jordan the same way he spoke to Dennis Rodman. I mean, come on. You've got to be able to read the room and have the ability to communicate at a deep level and know what motivates those people. My son, Nick, who's a broadcaster, a very accomplished one, and hockey, his first job out of college was as a baseball broadcaster, and his boss was tough on him, man. I mean, he was that guy because he didn't know how to lead. He was very assertive, very direct, do it this way, what's wrong with you, all that. And 3 weeks in, my son, who's very sensitive, he's got a great personality, but he's got a sensitive soul. He calls me up and he says, I'm going to quit. I said, what? And you see this all the time. What do you mean you're going to quit? He said, this guy's abusive and I can't talk to him. So I said, does he drink beer? And he said, what do you mean? I said, take him for a beer, man, and have the courage and the stones to look him in the eye and say, this is how you communicate with me to get the most out of me. And if you communicate with this, you're going to be blown away at how good I am. If you do what you're doing currently, we're not going to make it. Do you want me here? Do you want me to be the best? And see, that's a sign of a good leader, right? To be able to have a difficult conversation, especially with somebody who's your superior. And you know what? It worked. They ended up being great friends. So that's the area I think I get frustrated with so much but I don't want to bash. I've said this before. I want to build. How do we build leaders? How do we build, Larry? You've owned dealerships. You're a champion at training. You're highly respected. Some dealerships only use you for hiring. They know that you know how to bring people in. How do we build leaders? How do we build managers to be great leaders?
Well, if you're asking from the perspective of dealerships or even in the world, it's a matter of going back to basics that seem to have disappeared a lot in our society. There's got to be accountability. There's got to be some modicum of respect. Listen, Bart, under different circumstances, it's you and me, the four guys. I mean, I tell a great dirty joke, a great one, but we wouldn't do it in front of Mary. It wouldn't be respectful. But I tell you the truth, I got tired of going to baseball games or other sporting events where people were throwing F-bombs around and there was 10-year-olds sitting there.
Yeah, me too.
If we don't have if you don't respect yourself, you can't respect anyone else. And when you don't have basic respects and basic accountability, you're dead. Great leaders need to be accountable. Joe Paterno said it beautifully. He said, for Penn State, he said, When the team does something, when something goes right, the team did it. When something goes wrong, I did it.
You know what, Larry?
To look people in the eye and say, hey, I screwed this up. I might have let you guys down. I'm going to be better next time.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt. I was going to say that wasn't Joe Paterno. It was Woody Hayes. I'm a Buckeye. But I think it was Joe Paterno. So that is so good. And thank you for saying that. As you know, next week, I think, as we're broadcasting this, probably about the time this gets broadcast, I have 40 years of sobriety. Now, that doesn't, people say, oh, congratulations. No, don't do that. I just got my life together, right? But here's what happens. Why does that work? Why do the programs like AA work? Why is it that
process driven?
Boom, 12 steps. My whole book, Keep the Change. The whole thing.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but you mentioned football and various sports. I'm on record, okay? I said years and years ago that Bill Belichick is highly revered. He's a great coach, but because of ESPN and the exposure, and that he's not the greatest coach of all time, and we'll find out when him and Tom Brady separate. I swear, I said this years before Brady left. The greatest coach of all time is Vince Lombardi, because he took a team that was 1-10-1 and won 5 out of 6 championships, won the first 2 Super Bowls. The only championship game he ever lost was to my Eagles. That was our big claim of fame till Nick Foles beat Tom Brady. And Vince Lombardi was not an offensive genius. Vince Lombardi ran the Lombardi sweep. They ran around the right side of the line. Everybody in the league knew it was coming. Nobody could stop him because everybody hit their blocks. When you see a guy on ESPN throw a 70-yard touchdown and the receiver's dancing around in the end zone, what you don't see is the fullback that threw the block that gave the quarterback an extra half second. It's all about process. Yes. If you follow up demonically, if it's automatic to you to work everybody, to act like every customer is costing you $450, not to do. If you absolutely don't give up on things and you do it with a smile and you don't let yourself fail, you won't fail. Yeah. But with leaders, we need to demand of them things that people don't demand of anymore. Listen, you and me are not kids. And congratulations on your sobriety. Whether you want to be congratulated or not, it's still something. Not everybody can do it. What's interesting is when I was a kid, if a guy got arrested, he put his coat over his face because he didn't want his mother to see his picture in the paper. We don't have that anymore. People do the most heinous acts, the most horrible things, and stare into the camera, go, so what? So if you have no shame, if you don't have any respect and you don't have any accountability, how can you possibly be a leader? Yeah. And the other thing is great leaders have to be willing to lead from the front. We don't have a country if George Washington didn't lead from the front because he didn't have ammunition. He didn't have the materials he needed to beat the British. Yeah. Okay. Martin Luther King never said there's a lot of racists in Alabama or Chicago. I'll see you after the march. He led the front of every march. So we must demand of leaders that they hold themselves accountable, that they respect themselves so they can respect us, and that we know we can count on them. Yeah. I don't know about you, Bart, but man, I see such a lack of people relying on other people. Such a lack. Well, that's my guy. I can count on him. So I just think that we've bred a society where being a leader, being consistent isn't that important. And that's really sad. That's something we have to reverse. But you always see individuals that step up as leaders because it's inside their DNA. Yeah. And I think that when I thought about this 2 days ago, so it's so fresh in me. What is it? Gallup talks about to be a great coach, you have to hold them accountable. That's one of 3 things that are critical to be a great coach. But I want to back up to why do people, you talk about this volunteer program that was started decades ago by Bill and Bob in Ohio called Alcoholics Anonymous. And the thing that they started was you got to get a sponsor, coach, and you have to have accountability partners. That was the thing. And you got to follow the steps. If you get a sponsor, you go to meetings every day, one day at a time, every day, every time without fail. Do that. Talk to your sponsor once a day or so because he or she can call you on stuff. Have accountability partners in your life where you call them and say, hey, man, I screwed up. 90% of the people on the planet don't have that.
And I know for a fact, because I had that, every day I was a different person than I was the day before. I got held accountable, and my sponsor wasn't afraid of saying, Bart, here's what I'm seeing for you. And I needed that because, look, I love what John Maxwell says in his book, Self-Aware Leader. What is the number one thing that leaders don't do very well? They aren't self-aware. If you're a self-aware leader, what's that mean? Is it because we are looking all around? No, we've got people like you, Larry, people like Richie, people like John Maxwell that can get us on the phone and say, Bart, here's what you're doing, and you're going in the wrong direction. But they do it in a way by asking questions that make us think about it ourselves, so we own it. We don't just fight it. For example, my sponsor, you know why he was so good? Not because he said, Bart, you're being an idiot. Because he said, let me ask you a question. When you did X last week and you got the result of Y, how'd that work out for you? Not too good. Okay, so what might you do different next time? I don't know. I know you don't know, but if you did know, what do you think you'd do different? Well, I'd probably do this. Great. What if you tried that and you got a different result? Well, maybe it's worth it. Great. So what if you and
positive reinforcement rather than hit somebody in the head with a brick?
Exactly. And guess who came up with the answer? I did, not my sponsor. If he had said it, I would have said, get out, you're crazy, right? And it's because we as leaders can trigger that in people if we have the right questions. Like when you're interviewing somebody, that's why I'm so fascinated by what you're doing. When you interview somebody, you've got questions. And you know when you ask that question, you're going to get some kind of an answer. And it gives you an idea of what kind of self-aware person do I have here, or if I have somebody that's just giving me some, right? So tell us about it. We kind of wrap here. I'd love to hang out longer, but you've got a conference coming up, my friend. Can you share with us what your conference is all about and put a plug out there for that?
Sure. August 20th and 21st, it'll be in Colorado. It's going to be the Connect, Convert, and Close Part 2. We just did it in Tampa. It's going to be how sales and BDC can coexist. It's going to feature myself and Sean Armorer, the BDC alchemist, great guy. I believe, unless I am mistaken, that Bart Nollenberger is going to join us.
Yes.
Among some other people. And we're going to try to give a lot of really good information. We're going to skip the BS. And we're going to get as much involvement from our audience as possible, because you said it beautifully earlier with your sponsor. You got to ask questions. You know what most leaders really need to be good leaders? They need mirrors. They need to stop looking at everybody else to blame and look in the mirror and say, what did I do wrong? And what can I do?
Yeah. Why don't we do that? You know why? Because we look at everybody else by our own intentions. And we look at them by their results, right? We say, oh man, how come they're so stupid? Well, they're human. That might be it, right? Why am I so stupid? Again, it's for me, Larry, and I'm sure for you too. I got to ask myself good questions all day. Tony Robbins says the quality of our life is determined by the quality of our questions, man. If I ask myself, why are you so stupid? I'm going to get an answer. If I ask myself, what can I learn? I'm going to get a better answer. So yeah, good stuff. So Larry, thank you for sharing that about the conference. Give us one takeaway that you believe that to be a great leader, and let's talk automotive, because a lot of people on this are automotive. Great strategy, great leader for somebody we've talked a lot about a lot of things today, but one last Larry Feldman bit of advice to be the best you can be at leading others.
Define your goals and help people define their goals and help them achieve it.
Oh, amen. Amen. My favorite quote, Larry, Zig Ziglar. My wife loves this quote too. You can get anything you want if you help enough people get what they want, right?
My favorite Zig quote is, training is like bathing. I recommend it every day because it doesn't
weigh. Speaking of training, I've been reading Unreasonable Hospitality. You ever read that book?
It's great.
Oh my gosh. But what does he say? He says daily meetings. Daily meetings.
But wait, but the meetings have to be short and they have to
Yes.
be structured. Most
Yes.
people need to go to meeting school because their meetings are pointless. They get off the track and they're too long. Here's what we're going to talk about. We're talked about it. Anybody have any comments? Thank you for being here. Have a good day.
Yeah.
We spend way. I said to a friend of mine once this, would you like to make 100 cash? Sure, Larry. Here, I'm going to give it to you. Just when you go into your meeting, stand up after a half an hour and say, I don't think we've wasted enough time on this. Could we go a little longer?
That's awesome. You know, I get, and you too, we sit in meetings. I like to observe other people giving meetings, and I like to sit in the back and watch. Guess what happens most of the time? They're espousing their Solomon-like wisdom, and they're pouring that out for whatever period of time, and there's not one question or one practice done in the meeting.
And not one thing remembered other than they couldn't wait to get out of that meeting.
Amen. Exactly. So I agree. I do meetings, by the way. I teach managers how to have great meetings. So, hey, if you want some help with that, you got my number. Larry, how do they get a hold of you, either for hiring or your wisdom in the business? How does somebody get a hold of you?
Well, my website is careerchangersusa.com. You'll see endorsements on there from the biggest host here in the world, Bob Hollinshead. You'll see it from David Long. You'll see a bunch of endorsements from various dealers that have used me and continue to use me. Now I'm going to give you something really radical. I'm going to give you my phone number because if I'm not training or on a plane, I answer my phone. And my phone number is 215-407-5174. 215-407-5174. If you call me, you will get me.
Yeah, man. I'll call you at 3:00 just to test that.
No problem.
Hey, like you said, either training or on a plane. So, hey, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Bob Goff, the author of Love Does, wrote his phone number in the back of his book. So I made a decision to put my phone number in the back of my book. Not many people call me. I guess I need to sell more books, but
please call Bart. He's a little lonely. Come on.
That's right, man. But I'll pick up most of the time unless I'm training or on a plane. Hey, it's been fun, Larry. I hope we get to do this again. Thank you for inviting me to be part of your Connect. Your Connect. Help me out.
Connect, Convert, Close.
I can't read my own
writing. By the way, if it isn't there, it should be there today. I sent you my book, Inner Moron Demons, How to Avoid Them and How to Live Your Best Life. I'd love to hear what you think about it.
And I'm on it as soon as I do that. Thank you. I got a new friend, and I always love hanging out for 20 minutes with no interruptions, or in this case, 35. So thanks again, my friend, for being so wise and for sharing your thinking in terms of how we can be better at this industry.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. Stay healthy.
Yes. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you being with us. See you next time on Keep the Change. Go ahead and share this with your brothers and sisters, and go ahead and subscribe. We'd love to have you on our podcast weekly. Take care.